The Harrington Foundation's grand ballroom shimmered under its towering chandeliers, each crystal reflecting gold across the marble floors. Conversations softened as Aya Morton entered, the silk of her peach gown catching the light with quiet elegance. At 41, she didn't need theatrics to command a room, her presence was enough. People straightened when they saw her, some applauding, others whispering her name with admiration. She offered polite nods as associates approached, but before she could greet anyone, the crowd parted with a sudden, uneasy shift, like an instinctive reaction to an approaching storm. A boy, barely 14, walked toward her with the swagger of someone who had never been told, "No, Preston Harrington III." His blazer hung carelessly off one shoulder, tie loose, the curated image of effortless privilege. Behind him trailed 3 prep school friends, phones lifted, already recording. Preston stopped in front of her, rocking back on his heels with a smirk too sharp for his soft features. "Welcome to our party," he drawled. His voice cracked slightly, but the malice behind it didn't. Before Aya could speak, he lifted a crystal goblet high above her head. "Stand still." The wine fell in a dark arc, splashing across her face and chest. Gasps erupted. The peach silk of her gown bloomed into a red stain, as though she had been cut open. The cold liquid slid down her arms, dripping onto the marble at her feet. Melissa Harrington clapped like she'd just witnessed a well-executed magic trick. "Good boy, Preston. She fits the part now." Gregory Harrington's voice followed, low and sharp. "Careful. These galas weren't designed for your kind." Phones recorded everything, her humiliation, the laughter, the casual cruelty. Aya didn't flinch. Years of boardrooms filled with men who doubted her, dismissed her, underestimated her, had trained every muscle in her face. A waiter approached hesitantly with a napkin. She accepted it with the same grace she would use to receive an award. "What's wrong?" Preston taunted. "Cat got your tongue?" Aya dabbed at her neck once. Slowly, the room held its breath. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice carried farther than the boy's arrogance ever could. "You've just clarified my final decision." Preston blinked, confused. He had expected tears, anger, something messy. What he got instead was surgical precision. Aya stepped around him and moved toward the stage where she was meant to give her keynote. Every step left a faint red drop behind her, like a trail leading to judgment. Under the spotlights, with her gown still dripping, she placed both hands on the podium. "Good evening," she began. The room silenced itself. "I planned to speak about partnership and progress, but tonight's events require a different message." In the audience, Gregory's self-satisfied smile faltered. Effective immediately, Brightwave Innovations is terminating all negotiations regarding the proposed $650 million partnership with Harrington Energy Group. Gasps. Whispers. Some shouted in disbelief. "We choose partners whose values align with ours: integrity, respect, dignity. Tonight has made it clear that such alignment does not exist." Phones captured Gregory's reddening face. Melissa lowered her camera, eyes widening in horror. Preston shifted nervously, his earlier bravado evaporating. Aya pressed on. "We all live with the consequences of our choices. I choose to walk away from toxicity, no matter how profitable the alternative." She ended with a calm, "I wish you all a lovely evening," and stepped down from the stage. The ballroom dissolved into chaos behind her. Fingers tapped frantically on screens, news alerts chiming one after another. The Harrington family, once untouchable, was unraveling in real time. Reporters swarmed as she crossed the lobby. "Miss Morton, was this racially motivated? Will Brightwave pursue legal action? Do you believe the Harringtons?" Aya kept walking. Devon Shaw, Brightwave's PR director, forced his way toward her, tablet in hand, tie askew. "It's everywhere," he said breathlessly. "The live stream has 50,000 views, going viral faster than the wine hit your dress." He showed her the screen comments pouring in, calling out the Harringtons, praising Aya's composure. They reached the coat check. A young black woman handed Aya her wrap, eyes glistening. "You showed them we don't have to take it anymore," she whispered. Aya squeezed her hand. Outside, flashes exploded like lightning. Journalists shouted questions. Security barely contained them as Aya slipped into the back seat of her Tesla. City lights smeared past as Devon monitored the storm online. "Harrington stock is already dropping," he said. "Gregory's trying to spin it as your meltdown, but no one believes it. The footage is too clear." "They'll hit harder tomorrow," Aya murmured. "Have legal ready." Devon hesitated. "Aya, you've become a symbol. People are calling this a turning point." She leaned back, exhausted. The dried wine on her skin felt tight, constricting. "I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted to run my company without dealing with their entitled garbage." The car rolled into her private garage, where extra security waited. The elevator doors closed, sealing her away from the noise, the cameras, the cruelty. Only then did her shoulders finally drop. The night had soaked her in humiliation. But beneath the ache and exhaustion, a sharper truth remained. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Devon left her with a final reminder to rest, but sleep felt impossibly distant. When Aya stepped into her apartment, the silence pressed in around her like another layer of exhaustion. She let the ruined gown slip from her shoulders and pool on the marble floor before stepping into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the wine, the laughter, the swarm of phones. But none of it left her mind. She had barely wrapped herself in a robe when her phone buzzed. An encrypted message. "Miss Morton, my name is Eleanor Reed. I worked for the Harrington family for 27 years. What happened tonight was not an isolated incident. I have documents, recordings, evidence of things they have paid millions to hide. I'm ready to share everything. Please meet with me." Aya read it twice. The tone wasn't frantic. It was deliberate, measured, real. Her response was immediate. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m., Brightwave Tower. Tell security you're here for me." "I'll be there," Eleanor replied. "You're not alone anymore." Aya set her phone down. The war the Harringtons had sparked tonight was about to escalate. Café Loron was discreet, tucked on a quiet corner where no one paid attention to anyone else. Aya arrived early, scanning the room automatically, 2 patrons on laptops. A barista half asleep, no lingering eyes. At precisely 8, Eleanor Reed walked in. At 74, she carried herself with the posture of someone who had spent decades being invisible but never blind. Her silver hair was precise, her clothing immaculately pressed. The leather satchel hanging from her shoulder looked heavy, too heavy for someone her size. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Reed," Aya said, rising. "Eleanor," she corrected gently. "After last night, I couldn't stay quiet. That boy, he's the same as his father was at that age. Same smile, same cruelty." The waiter approached, but Aya waved him off. Eleanor placed her satchel on the table and rested her hands protectively over it. "I began keeping records my first week in that house," she said, unbuckling the worn straps. "The things they said to staff, especially staff who looked like me. No one would have believed it without proof." She pulled out leather-bound journals, their pages yellowed at the edges. 27 years, she said softly. Every insult, every firing without cause, every buried complaint. Aya opened the first journal. The entry from 1995 described Gregory Harrington Sr. berating a groundskeeper until the man quit, then laughing about saving severance pay. Eleanor continued unloading the satchel. A small recorder, a thick envelope of photographs, and finally, a stack of internal documents. "I started recording them 10 years ago," she said, pressing play. Gregory's voice filled the booth, discussing how to frame an Indian executive who discovered accounting irregularities. "Plant something in his office." Everyone knows those people can't be trusted with money anyway. Aya's jaw tightened. How many of these? Hundreds. And that's not all. The photographs showed years of private parties, board meetings, and family events. Moments where the Harringtons mocked staff, bragged about unethical deals, taught their children to repeat their contempt like a family tradition. Then Eleanor slid a thick folder across the table. This is what matters most. They've been embezzling from their own company for years. The deal with Brightwave? They needed it to cover hundreds of millions in missing funds before the next audit. Aya scanned the numbers. It was meticulous. Fraud, layered, systemic, intentional. And the rest? Aya asked quietly. Gambling debts, hidden properties, bribes, destroyed evidence. Judges paid off. Eleanor shook her head. Their empire is built on other people's suffering. Aya swallowed hard. This wasn't just corruption, it was a dynasty of rot. Why now? She asked. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. My granddaughter sent me that video of you, standing there with wine dripping down your face while they laughed. I saw myself, all those years ago, staying silent, protecting my job, my family, but I'm old now. They can't hurt me anymore. Aya reached across the table and took her hand. They'll try to discredit you. Let them, Eleanor said, voice steady. Every document is dated. Every photo has metadata. Every recording is time-stamped. I made sure it would all hold up in court. For hours, they reviewed the evidence. It was exhaustive dates, witnesses, consequences. Even the people the Harringtons had blacklisted, their ruined careers tracked with chilling detail. They raised their children to think cruelty is their birthright, Eleanor whispered, showing a photo of a 6-year-old Preston throwing food at a maid while his parents applauded. By the time they finished, Aya felt the weight of a truth far larger than her own humiliation. It wasn't simply personal anymore. It was systemic. We'll verify everything, she promised. And then we'll bring it all to light. Eleanor nodded, relief softening her expression for the first time. It's time someone showed them they're not untouchable. Back at Brightwave's glass-walled conference room, sunlight filtered across the table where Eleanor's documents now lay organized in precise stacks. Devon paced as he monitored social media. Marisol, the chief legal counsel, sorted through files with growing horror. This is staggering, Marisol said. Tax fraud, embezzlement, discrimination, witness tampering. They're not a corporation. They're a criminal syndicate in suits. Devon looked up. Public support is still on your side. The video is at 30 million views. Watchdog groups are calling for. His tablet chimed. Then Aya's phone. Then Marisol's. Breaking news, Devon said, voice tightening. Gregory Harrington just filed a lawsuit. Defamation and breach of contract. They're calling you emotionally unstable, claiming you manufactured the entire incident. The screens lit up with Gregory at a courthouse podium. Miss Morton's erratic behavior has cost shareholders millions, he said solemnly. We tried to handle this privately, but her instability leaves us no choice. Commentators soon appeared on split screens, speculating about Aya's mental health, competence, leadership, weaponizing stereotypes with thinly veiled racism. Phones rang non-stop. Board members demanded answers. Investors sought reassurance. The Harringtons just declared war, Aya said, standing at the head of the room. And they think money and influence will shield them. She gestured to Eleanor's evidence. They're wrong. James, the CFO, cleared his throat. Stock is down 12%. Partners are asking for emergency meetings. Then we don't wait, Marisol said. How fast can we authenticate everything? 48 hours, she answered. Maybe less. Aya looked around the room at the fear, the anger, the loyalty. "They're trying to overwhelm us with lawsuits and smear campaigns," she said. "But we don't fight chaos with panic. We fight it with truth." The room steadied. Heads lifted. Someone exhaled audibly. The war had officially begun. But Aya wasn't backing down. The meeting stretched until nearly 1 a.m., long after most of the city had gone quiet. But the battle unfolding around Aya Morton was only growing louder. As she finally stepped into her penthouse, the shimmer of the skyline felt cold and distant. She changed into silk pajamas and tried to unwind, but her mind raced. Defense strategies, press timelines, legal countermeasures. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Preston's smirk and his parents' laughter. Just as she was beginning to drift, the thrum of helicopters cut through the night. News crews were circling her building, their searchlights sweeping past her windows like slow-moving accusations. She checked her phone, more planted stories, more twisting of her actions, more attempts to paint her as unstable and untrustworthy. The Harringtons were pulling every lever they had. Let them circle, she thought, watching the lights dance across her ceiling. The truth was coming, and they couldn't outrun it. At dawn, Aya stood before her mirror, steady hands applying deliberate strokes of makeup. The face staring back at her looked calm, composed nothing like the exhausted woman who had slept barely an hour. Her navy silk blouse and cream blazer gave her the air of someone unshaken, someone ready to fight. Devon's text arrived as she slipped on her heels. "Car's downstairs. Sandra Holt's team is ready." Sandra Holt had interviewed presidents, toppled corrupt CEOs, and exposed scandals that entire PR machines had tried to bury. This would not be a friendly chat. Aya welcomed that. Her private elevator descended into the garage, bypassing the crowd of reporters swarming the main entrance. Brightwave security had routed the car through a private tunnel, emerging blocks away from any cameras. Aya reviewed her notes during the 20-minute ride to the studio, though she no longer needed them. This wasn't just about herself anymore. This was about every person who'd been demeaned, dismissed, or dehumanized by people who wielded power like a weapon. Inside the studio, Sandra's team moved with quiet efficiency. A makeup artist made small touch-ups. The floor director called a 5-minute warning. Then Sandra herself approached, elegant in charcoal gray, her silver hair immaculate. "Thank you for being here," she said warmly. "I'm ready," Aya replied. The cameras blinked to life. "Good morning," Sandra began, her voice steady and commanding. "Today we speak with Aya Morton, CEO of Brightwave Innovations, about the incident that has sparked national debate on privilege, accountability, and racial dynamics in corporate America." She turned to Aya. "Let's start with the gala. What happened?" Aya kept her voice even. "I had just arrived when Preston Harrington III approached me. Without any provocation, he poured a full glass of red wine over my head. His parents filmed it while laughing. And your first thought?" "I thought about every professional who's ever been humiliated by those who believe their wealth protects them from consequences. It wasn't just wine on my dress. It was a public display of contempt." Sandra didn't soften the next question. "You canceled a $650 million partnership because of this. Critics say that's extreme." "Those critics mistake composure for weakness," Aya replied. "The incident simply confirmed what my due diligence had already revealed. The Harrington culture is grounded in entitlement and discrimination. Ending the deal wasn't impulsive. It was responsible." Sandra nodded slowly. "They claim you're weaponizing the incident to void a contract. That is false. We were fully prepared to proceed until that moment." Their tactic is predictable. When confronted, attack the accuser. Paint her as unstable, irrational, angry. It's a familiar playbook, particularly when the target is a black woman challenging a power structure. So this is part of a larger pattern? It's the same pattern countless others face. The intern labeled too aggressive for asking questions. the executive dismissed as difficult for expecting equal treatment. This is not new. What's new is how visible it's become. The interview continued for nearly an hour, Sandra's questions sharp and exacting, Aya's answers incisive and unflinching. When it aired, social media erupted. Viewers shared their own stories, humiliations, abuses of power, subtle sabotage dressed as professionalism. Support for Aya surged. 3 hours later, Gregory Harrington stood before cameras outside Harrington Energy headquarters, his expression brittle despite flawless makeup. "This is a calculated attack on our company," he declared. "Miss Morton is weaponizing race to distract from her own breach of contract. We will pursue maximum damages." The aggression backfired instantly. Commentators noted how his tone mirrored exactly what Aya had described entitlement masquerading as outrage. His attempt to discredit her only amplified her credibility. That evening, while reviewing coverage in her office, an encrypted email appeared. Internal Harrington documents, time sensitive. Inside were frantic communications from Harrington executives, orders to destroy documents, hide financial records, silence employees, redirect auditors. A second email arrived minutes later. Then, a third. Aya immediately called Devon and Marisol. They combed through the files late into the night. Every document painted the same picture: chaos, panic, guilt. "They're scared," Devon said, staring at a particularly damning memo. "They should be," Marisol answered, already drafting new filings. Aya turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The Harrington Tower glowed in the distance, tall and gleaming, a monument built on intimidation and buried crimes. Monuments could fall. Aya arrived at Brightwave headquarters before sunrise the next morning. The lobby was empty, the building still waking. Devon was waiting in her office, a stack of printouts under his arm. "You need to see this first," he said. He pulled up an email from Brightwave's primary banking partner. "Due to ongoing concerns, we are temporarily suspending all transaction processing pending review." Aya's jaw tightened. "How many?" 3 other banks have sent similar notices. Gregory's been calling everyone he can. "We have 7 major partners pausing activity. That's about $40 million frozen." Aya exhaled slowly, steady but simmering. "There's more," Devon added hesitantly. He turned the screen toward her. Surveillance photos. Aya entering her building. Aya having lunch with Eleanor. Aya walking into Brightwave headquarters. All taken within the last 24 hours. The Harringtons weren't just fighting her in the press or in court. They were watching her, up close, and they were getting desperate. Devon's expression was grim as he tapped the surveillance photo on his tablet. A man with a telephoto lens stood half-hidden behind a car. "Private investigator," he said. But that's not the worst part. He pulled up a draft headline, clearly prepared by Harrington's PR machine. "Brightwave CEO's hidden history. Mother's criminal record raises questions." Aya felt her stomach tighten. Her mother had worked 3 jobs, sacrificed everything, survived on scraps, and made one desperate mistake decades ago during a medical emergency. Now the Harringtons wanted to weaponize it. "Get legal on the phone," she said sharply. "Restraining orders. Today." Before Devon could respond, Marisol rushed in. "Green Valley Solar is threatening to pull out. Gregory's friends are leaning on their board." A call flashed on Aya's desk, another anxious board member. She ignored it. "Show me the latest whistleblower files." The main screen lit with frantic internal emails, orders to shred financial documents, discussions about hiding offshore accounts, desperate attempts to locate Eleanor and silence her. Aya's phone buzzed again, a notification from her bank. Her personal accounts were now frozen. "They're trying to choke us financially," Devon said quietly. "If we can't move money, we can't fight." Aya walked to the window. The investigator ducked behind a car again. Reporters hovered outside the barricades. They were closing in. "How long can we operate if everything stays frozen?" she asked. 3 weeks, Marisol replied. Less if partners keep pulling out. Another round of calls came from investors, demanding explanations. Aya ignored them all. "Get Eleanor somewhere safe," she said. "They'll come after her next." By afternoon, the pressure had multiplied. Vendors demanded new payment terms. Several long-term partners paused projects. Smaller news sites began running sensational stories about Aya's mother, twisting one mistake into a caricature meant to discredit Aya's leadership. "They're calling it the Morton family legacy," Devon reported. "It's trending." Aya closed her eyes for a moment. She'd expected attacks, but dragging her mother into this was a line she hadn't anticipated and one she would not forgive. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "They're planning something bigger tonight. Be ready." Aya didn't reply. By sunset, Brightwave's executive floor had transformed into a war room. Protesters gathered in the streets below, some carrying "Stand with Aya" signs, others chanting in support of the Harringtons. Police set up barricades as crowds swelled. Inside, Eleanor sat at the long conference table as two investigative journalists reviewed the documents she'd protected for decades. Marisol coordinated with a team of lawyers on video call. Devon typed nonstop, organizing media outreach. "Let's categorize everything," Aya said, taking her seat beside Eleanor. "We need this fully mapped before sunrise." Eleanor's hands trembled as she opened her satchel. "I kept it all sorted by year. The discrimination cases are in the red folders." A journalist opened one. "This shows systematic denial of promotions to minority staff while fast-tracking less qualified white employees." "That was only the surface," Eleanor said. "Look at the wage documents. 20 years of paying Black and Hispanic workers less for the exact same roles. They hid it by assigning different job titles." Marisol's team scanned and cataloged each page, creating encrypted digital copies. Marcus, the second journalist, unfolded a series of memos. "Their financial misconduct is worse than I thought. They ran money through shell companies, then buried the losses." Devon projected clusters on a digital board: discrimination, wage theft, tax evasion, embezzlement, hush money. Each category expanded as more files were analyzed. "Tell them about Christmas 1998, Eleanor said softly. The room stilled. "Maria Torres was fired 2 days before Christmas after reporting sexual harassment," Eleanor continued. 3 kids, no income. They blacklisted her. She lost everything." Aya placed a steady hand over Eleanor's. "You remembered all of it." "I had to," Eleanor whispered. "Someone needed to." The lawyers scribbled furiously. These harassment settlements alone could trigger multiple federal investigations. Combined with the wage theft, it's criminal conspiracy. Outside, chants grew louder, echoing through the glass. Police lights flickered across the room. Devon checked his phone. The Harringtons already tried to block 3 small outlets from running related stories. "We need a coordinated release. One they can't silence." Aya nodded. "Partner with every major network. If one link breaks, the others hold." Eleanor pulled out another folder, photos from company parties. Black staff forced to serve drinks while white junior employees mingled as equals. They thought it was amusing. Marcus traced connections on the financial documents. They planned to use the Brightwave deal to cover massive offshore losses. That's why they're fighting so viciously. Hour by hour, the picture became undeniable. Eleanor's files didn't just contain proof. They contained the architecture of a generational empire built on exploitation. Near midnight, the protests doubled. Flares of shouting drifted upward. News vans crowded the block. Inside, the team worked with relentless focus, fact-checking, encrypting, preparing. Finally, Aya reviewed the finalized dossier. "Begin the secure test sends," she instructed. Notes were typed. Briefs were drafted. Journalists finalized their reports. Lawyers prepared for retaliation. Aya's finger hovered over the final command. "Release now." She pressed. Minutes later, the world shifted. Every major outlet published breaking headlines. Harrington dynasty exposed. Decades of fraud and discrimination. Federal investigation launched. Devon rushed into her office. It's everywhere. National. International. Hashtags are exploding. Market trackers showed Harrington Energy stock in freefall, down 30% in the first hour. Live helicopter footage broadcast federal agents entering Harrington headquarters as employees streamed out with boxes. The Harrington board called an emergency session. Shareholders demanded Gregory's removal. And Eleanor arrived mid-morning, eyes brimming as she watched her decades of careful documentation unravel the empire that had harmed so many. You did this, Aya told her softly. Return-ins. Then. No, Eleanor replied. We did. Eleanor stood in Aya's office, tears shining as headlines flashed across the screens. I never thought I'd see this day, she whispered. Her decades of meticulous records were now national news dates, locations, witnesses, financial trails of fraud stretching back generations. Former employees appeared on television, faces blurred, recounting discrimination and harassment that matched Eleanor's journals word for word. Even Maria Torres, the woman fired before Christmas in 1998, finally spoke publicly. By noon, Harrington Energy stock had dropped so sharply that trading was suspended. Investment firms issued statements condemning the abuses. Gregory Harrington was suspended by unanimous board vote. Melissa was filmed screaming at reporters outside their mansion, mascara streaking as security dragged her inside. Preston School announced he would be taking a leave of absence. For the first time, Aya felt the tide turning, justice unfolding, openly, beautifully. Federal agents left Harrington Energy headquarters with boxes of seized documents. Videos of Gregory being escorted out in shame went viral. Outside Brightwave, the earlier protests had transformed into a celebration. People danced, chanted, held signs. Eleanor's phone rang non-stop as former staff members called to share their own stories. They're not afraid anymore, she said softly. They can finally speak. Late in the afternoon, Devon rushed into Aya's office with a tablet. You need to see this. He played a compilation of security footage from the gala, multiple angles of Preston pouring wine over Aya while his parents laughed. The internet devoured it, analyzing every frame with outrage. The public consensus was clear. The Harringtons had exposed themselves. When Aya finally left her office that evening, crowds outside cheered. Signs waved. Thank you, Aya. Black excellence. Eleanor's army. For the first time since the wine dripped down her neck that night, Aya allowed herself to breathe. Her driver took a longer route home to avoid the media vans. She leaned back in her seat, exhausted and relieved, until her phone buzzed. A message from Devon. You need to see what the Harringtons just released. Aya's stomach sank. She grabbed her remote and turned on the TV. Every channel showed the same breaking news. Preston Harrington III sat beside celebrity interviewer Mitchell Grant, tears streaming down his face. He looked small, innocent, terrified. I was so scared, he cried. She cornered me backstage before the gala. She said if my family didn't give her company what she wanted, she'd destroy us. Mitchell leaned forward, voice thick with sympathy. That must have been terrifying, Preston. You're just a child. I didn't know what to do, Preston whimpered. She was so aggressive. I thought I had to defend myself. Melissa appeared next, holding her son's hand, now collected and icy calm. No child should feel threatened by a powerful CEO throwing a tantrum over business negotiations, she said tearfully. Aya froze. Then Gregory appeared. We didn't want to release this footage, he said solemnly. But given the vicious attacks on our family, the public deserves to know the truth. Grainy security footage filled the screen, showing what looked like Aya approaching Preston in a dim hallway, gesturing aggressively as he cowered. A distorted voice played through static. Mess with me. Your whole family pays. Aya's breath caught. She had never spoken to Preston backstage. She had never even been in that hallway. The footage was fabricated but chillingly convincing. Her phone exploded with notifications. Devin called. "Half the internet is calling it an obvious fake," he said. "But the other half, they're turning on you. Number Aya threatens is trending." "That video is fake," she said, voice shaking. "I never." "Aya," Devin interrupted. "Titanium Solutions just suspended all contracts with us pending investigation." Her biggest client, gone in seconds. Another call. Marisol. "The board has scheduled an emergency vote for tomorrow morning. They're reviewing your position as CEO. Outside, car doors slammed. Shouting erupted. Aya went to her window and saw reporters swarming her yard, cameras flashing nonstop. Police cars lined the street, but officers only stood by while photographers climbed over her garden wall. Then, something crashed outside a bottle, maybe, something thrown. Her home security alarm blared. "Miss Morton," her security guard said through the intercom. "Step away from the windows. We can't guarantee your safety." Aya retreated just as a red smear appeared on her door. Spray-painted slurs, ugly, hateful, dripping. Inside, her phone buzzed again and again. News alerts, investor emails, board messages, each headline worse than the last. Brightwave CEO, accused of threatening minor. Morton Empire, built on intimidation. Board to vote on CEO's future. Security escorted her to the panic room. As the metal door sealed shut, Aya saw strangers trampling her garden, shouting for her downfall, while officers focused only on keeping media crews safe. Inside, screens displayed every camera feed. Her home violated, her reputation shredded. The fabricated footage looped endlessly, each replay sharper, crueler. Her private line rang the board chairman. "Aya, given the seriousness of these allegations, an emergency vote will be held tomorrow at 8 a.m. Bring legal counsel." She ended the call without speaking. Her phone vibrated again. "Baby, are you okay? Please tell me you're safe." Her mother. Aya stared at the message. The one woman who had done everything to protect her, now unwittingly drawn into this nightmare. On every screen, Preston's tearful face replayed, the doctored footage running beside him. Melissa's faux concern, Gregory's solemn lie. And for the first time in years, Aya Morton, who had stood unshaken through hostile acquisitions, discrimination, humiliation, felt something inside finally give way. She slid down the wall of the panic room, her body curling inward as silent sobs shook her shoulders. The whirl of flashing police lights outside flickered across the screens, painting the small room in red and blue. The false footage played again, and again, and again, each loop making the lie bigger, each loop pushing her truth further into the dark. Aya buried her face in her hands. Alone, surrounded by screens showing the destruction of everything she'd built, the woman who had never cracked, broke. The humiliation of the night before still clung to Aya like a bruise, but as morning crept through the narrow window of the panic room, the exhaustion in her chest shifted, hardening into something sharper. She wiped her face, straightened her clothes, and forced her breathing into steadiness. A soft knock sounded. "Miss Morton," her head of security called. "Mr. Shaw and Miss Reed are here." Aya lifted her chin. "Let them in." Devin rushed through the door first, hair askew, suit wrinkled in ways it had never been before. He looked like he had aged 5 years overnight. "They planned the entire smear campaign," he said without preamble. "The timing, the outlets, it was coordinated weeks in advance." Eleanor entered behind him, slower, carrying a thermos and a paper bag. "You can't save the world on an empty stomach," she chided softly. "Drink." The warm scent of her homemade coffee grounded Aya. She took a long sip, letting the heat settle into her chest. "Show me the raw video," she said. Devin projected the file onto the main screen. The grainy footage showed a shadowy figure meant to resemble Aya stepping toward Preston in a backstage hallway. "Frame by frame," Aya ordered. They scrubbed through the footage in slow motion. The supposed argument, Preston cowering, the silhouette gesturing threateningly. It seemed airtight until Aya's finger shot up. "There," she said. "Pause." They zoomed in on the brass door handle. In the curved reflection, the hallway was empty. Only a cleaning cart sat in the corner. "Time stamp?" she demanded. 19 hours, 42 minutes, and 15 seconds, Devon replied. "That's the exact moment the doctored footage claims I'm threatening him." Her eyes sharpened. The reflection reveals the truth. The actual hallway was empty. Eleanor let out a breathless laugh. They rushed it, took the hallway clip and composited figures into it, but forgot the reflective surfaces. "Get me everything on the venue's security system," Aya said. "Installation logs, maintenance reports, and I want a forensic expert, someone who can testify conclusively to video manipulation." Devon nodded. "I know who to call." Aya's phone buzzed. "SEC launches formal investigation into Brightwave and Harrington Energy." "They're burying us in federal paperwork," Devon muttered. "No," Aya said, straightening. "They just opened a door. Eleanor's records become federal evidence now." She moved to a tactical desk, tapping open files. "The board meeting is in 3 hours. They expect me to walk in broken, begging for my job." "But you won't," Eleanor said. "No. I'm going to present our counteroffensive. Evidence, forensics, documentation of the Harringtons' media manipulation." Her voice gained strength. "They built this entire attack on a crying child and a forged video." She exhaled slowly. "They were wrong." Devon began dialing journalists. Aya paced. "I want something bigger, something they can't edit or distort. A live press conference tomorrow morning." "Liv?" Devon blinked. "They'll try to stop you." "They already tried." Aya gestured to the security screens, showing vandalism, swarming media, hateful graffiti. "They gave me their worst last night. I broke, but I'm standing." She looked at Eleanor. "That's what they never understand about us. We get back up." Devon returned to her side. "I'll scout venues." "Good. And make sure no Harrington-linked outlet gets credentialed." The intercom crackled. "Your car is ready, Miss Morton." Aya gathered her files, checked her reflection, and squared her shoulders. "Time to remind them who I am." The next morning, hundreds of reporters crowded an outdoor stage, hastily erected in downtown. The sky was clear, deceptively calm. Aya stepped onto the platform wearing a crisp white suit, a deliberate contrast to the wine-stained gown from the gala. "Good morning," she began. Her voice carried without wavering. 3 days ago, a child poured wine on my head while his parents laughed. Today, I will show you why that moment was the tip of a far deeper corruption." The crowd hushed. "A video was released yesterday claiming I threatened Preston Harrington III. Watch closely." The doctored footage played on a massive screen. Aya lifted a laser pointer. "Focus on this brass door handle at timestamp. 19 hours, 42 minutes, and 15 seconds. Technicians enlarged the reflection. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "As you can see," Aya continued, "the hallway is empty. Only a cleaning cart is present. But in the main footage, I'm supposedly confronting Preston. The reflection exposes the truth." A digital forensics expert joined her on stage. "This file contains clear evidence of manipulation," Dr. Sarah Walsh explained. "Metadata shows edits at 3:47 a.m. yesterday, hours before release. The figures were inserted using compositing software." Aya stepped forward again. "The Harrington family fabricated a video to incite public outrage and derail a federal investigation. But this isn't just one lie." She gestured off stage. "Miss Eleanor Reed, please join me." Eleanor emerged slowly, clutching her weathered satchel. Aya guided her to the podium. For 27 years, I worked in the Harrington household, Eleanor said. I documented everything. She opened a journal, voice steady despite her shaking hands. The 15th of March 1995, Gregory Harrington ordered me to falsify payroll records, deducting hours from immigrant workers who couldn't fight back. She turned a page. The 2nd of June 2004, Melissa Harrington instructed staff to hide a sexual harassment complaint involving a board member. Recordings played next, Gregory threatening employees, ordering evidence destroyed, bragging about manipulating audits. Aya returned to the microphone. What you've heard today is not workplace misconduct. It is organized criminal activity. They weaponized a child's tears, falsified evidence, and tried to destroy anyone who stood in their way. She let the silence stretch. Not anymore. The camera zoomed in. Her white suit gleamed under the morning sun. Aya looked directly into the lenses, unflinching. Today, the truth stands on its own. Aya clicked to the final slide, letting the numbers and memos speak for themselves. These records show over $12 million in stolen wages. These emails reveal discriminatory hiring practices. And these, she said, highlighting a thread of internal correspondence, prove the Harringtons intended to use our partnership to conceal embezzled funds before their next audit. Gasps spread across the crowd as the screen displayed the messages. Executives panicking, ordering midnight shreddings, plotting to silence whistleblowers. But perhaps more disturbing, Aya continued, is how they responded when exposed. Images of her vandalized home filled the screen slurs sprayed across her door, broken windows, her privacy stripped away. When intimidation failed, they fabricated a video. When lies faltered, they attacked my home. This is not a business dispute. It is a criminal operation. She faced the cameras head-on. To my board watching, removing me would not stabilize this company. It would reward corruption. It would tell every dynasty that they can keep power through fear. The silence that followed was total. Aya scanned the sea of raised phones. Today, I stand not just as a CEO. I stand as every worker whose voice was dismissed. Every person told to stay quiet for the comfort of those in power. Eleanor stepped forward, placing a final stack of documents on the podium. These are copies, she said. All evidence has been submitted to federal authorities. As if the universe had timed it, dark SUVs appeared at the edge of the plaza. Federal markings glinted under the sun. Aya noticed murmurs ripple through the crowd as the vehicles headed downtown toward Harrington Energy. The time for buried truths is over, Aya said, lifting her materials. Everything shown here today is now public record. Justice will proceed. She left the stage to a storm of shouted questions, but answered none. Instead, she guided Eleanor off stage just as Devon rushed toward them. The board just emailed, he said breathlessly. They're postponing the vote to remove you. And Aya, our stock is climbing. Aya barely reacted. Her attention was locked on the motorcade, weaving toward Harrington's shining tower in the distance. Truth doesn't break, she whispered. It only strengthens under pressure. The glass facade of Harrington Energy gleamed like nothing could touch it until the federal agents stepped through the doors. Inside, employees pressed against the windows, phones raised as agents sealed exits and converged on the upper floors. Gregory Harrington was already in motion. Papers flew as he tore through drawers, stuffing documents into a briefcase. Sweat darkened his collar. The security feed showed him slamming his fist onto his desk as he barked into his phone. Shut everything down. Delete the servers. Do it now. Elevators dinged. Agents approached. Gregory bolted for the private elevator, slamming the button repeatedly. When the doors lagged, he spun and sprinted down the emergency stairs, briefcase slapping the rail. Voices echoed behind him. On the ground floor, he burst into sunlight. And every camera on the plaza swung toward him. He ran. Gregory Harrington, stop. He ignored the command. 10 yards. 5. An agent launched, tackling him mid-stride. Gregory hit the pavement face first with a crack that echoed across the plaza. Blood splattered his collar. The briefcase burst open, papers fluttering like confetti of guilt. Helicopters circled above, broadcasting every humiliating second. "Do you know who I am?" Gregory screamed, thrashing, blood dripping down his chin. "Yes," the agent said coolly. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering." Across town, another squad surrounded the Harrington mansion. Melissa stood barefoot on marble tiles, frantically deleting messages. "They can't do this, we're Harringtons." Agents knocked once, then broke the door open. Melissa shrieked as her phone was swept from under her heel. "Attempted destruction of evidence," an agent said, bagging the device. "Add it to the file." Her silk robe whipped in the wind as cameras recorded her being escorted, wrists cuffed, past manicured hedges and horrified staff. At Preston's exclusive school, counselors and child services waited in the headmaster's office. The boy's trademark smirk was gone. "But I didn't do anything wrong," he whispered. A counselor crouched beside him. "Your parents taught you things that were harmful. We're here to help you unlearn them." Meanwhile, Aya sat in a quiet cafe with Eleanor as Devon monitored constant news updates. "The protection order is ironclad," Aya assured Eleanor. "You'll have security, and the whistleblower fund means you're financially safe." Eleanor's hands trembled as she signed the paperwork. "I never thought I'd live to see them held accountable." "Your courage brought this truth forward," Aya said. "You helped end an empire." Devon rushed over with his tablet. "You need to see this. Harrington Energy stock is collapsing. Trading halted. Banks suspending lines of credit." Aya's phone buzzed. "Board vote unanimous. Harrington family removed from all positions. Company restructuring underway." Eleanor's breath shuddered. "It's over." Aya nodded slowly. "The dynasty ends today." Across the country, offices paused as people gathered around screens, watching the fall unfold in real time. The sun climbed higher, giving the powerful nowhere left to hide. That evening, Aya stood at the head of Brightwave's boardroom. 30 directors watched her, their earlier hostility replaced by quiet shame. Charles Weber, the lead director, cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology. We should have trusted you." Aya raised a hand. "What matters now isn't who doubted me. What matters is the path forward. Brightwave's mission hasn't changed." The room fell silent, waiting, listening. Aya, steady and unbroken, reclaimed her seat. Justice had been served, but her fight and her leadership were just beginning. The boardroom felt different now, calmer, almost reverent. Where tension had once hung thick in the air, the directors now sat quietly, hands folded, waiting for Aya to speak. Charles Weber, the lead director, rose as she entered. "Miss Morton," he said, voice steady but humbled, "the vote is complete. The board stands unanimously behind your continued leadership." A soft ripple went through the room, applause, restrained but genuine. Aya nodded once. "Then, let's get back to work." Devon stepped to her side with a stack of updates. Quantum Solutions has reinstated their contract, and 17 new proposals arrived this morning. Everyone wants to collaborate. Aya flipped through the files. "We'll review each through our ethics committee. Any partner with a history like Harrington's is automatically declined." "Novatech and Riverside?" Devon asked. "Declined," Aya said without hesitation. "If our values aren't consistent, the numbers don't matter." She turned toward the board. "Effective today, Brightwave will establish the Eleanor Reed Whistleblower Protection Fund, a permanent, independent body to protect anyone who speaks truth to power." Murmurs of approval circled the table. "And," she added, "I want Eleanor on our Ethics Advisory Council." Eleanor, seated quietly at the back, pressed a hand over her heart. I never imagined." "You earned this," Aya said gently. "You preserved truth when no one else would. When Aya stepped into the Brightwave atrium, hundreds of employees gathered across balconies and stairwells. The moment they saw her, applause erupted thunderous, rolling upward through every level of the building. It wasn't polite applause. It was gratitude. It was relief. It was respect. A young intern stepped forward, eyes bright. "We're proud of you," she said. "All of us." Aya's throat tightened. "Then let's build something worthy of that pride." 2 weeks later, Aya stood beside Eleanor before the abandoned municipal building they'd purchased, cracked windows, peeling paint, vines crawling up stone walls. But beneath the decay was solid structure, resilient, waiting. "This is it," Aya said. "The heart of something new." They pushed open the doors. Dust rose in soft clouds. Sunlight fractured through broken glass. "We'll restore the main hall for public hearings," Aya explained. The first floor becomes a legal clinic-free council for whistleblowers and workers exploited by corporations. Upstairs, a research center documenting financial abuse, discrimination, and wage theft. And here, she stepped toward a high-ceilinged room once used for archives. The Eleanor Reed Justice Institute, a national hub for workers seeking protection, a training facility for advocates, an investigative unit collaborating with journalists. Eleanor's breath shook. "You're naming it after me?" "After your courage," Aya said. "After your refusal to look away." Donations poured in before the institute even opened. $5 contributions from service workers, larger ones from professors, small business owners, even former Harrington employees. Letters followed. "You helped me believe the truth matters. I wish someone like you existed when I needed help. This place will save people." Aya kept every letter. As they walked the building's second floor, Eleanor paused beside a window overlooking the street. "For decades, I stayed silent because I thought no one would believe me. Now your voice is shaping a nationwide movement," Aya said. Eleanor brushed a tear away. "I don't see broken walls, Aya. I see possibility." 3 months later, Aya entered the Harrington Foundation ballroom for the first time since that infamous night. The chandeliers sparkled as before, but the energy was transformed. Gone were the sneers, the whispers, the quiet cruelties. Tonight, the Civil Rights Alliance was honoring her. As she stepped inside, a wave of applause rose full, unrestrained, loud enough to shake the crystal fixtures above. Ministers, activists, educators, business leaders, and former Harrington employees stood to greet her. Screens displayed a montage. Aya at the press conference. Eleanor handing over journals. Agents leading Gregory away. The first families welcomed at the Institute. A plaque reading "The Eleanor, Reed Justice Institute Truth Protects Us All." When Aya took the stage, she paused, not to gather courage, but to absorb the moment that had once seemed impossible. "In this very room," she began, "I was humiliated publicly, laughed at, recorded like a spectacle, and many thought that would be the end of my story." She let the silence settle. But humiliation is not the same as defeat. People leaned forward, hanging onto her words. Power built on fear crumbles. Power built on truth endures. And when people speak up, when someone like Eleanor documents injustice for 27 years, empires fall. She motioned to Eleanor in the front row. The crowd applauded again, louder than before. "We built the Justice Institute for every person who's been told to stay quiet, for every worker threatened, every whistleblower silenced, every voice dismissed. The Harringtons relied on the world looking away. You all prove that when we look directly at wrongdoing together, it has nowhere left to hide." She exhaled, her voice softening. "I didn't win this battle alone. A nation chose truth. And because of that, thousands now have a place to turn. A place built on courage, evidence, and hope." Her gaze drifted across the chandeliers, as if reclaiming the space inch by inch. "You turned a night of humiliation into a legacy of justice. And for that, I thank you." The audience rose in a standing ovation, long, powerful, unwavering. Eleanor stepped onto the stage, taking Aya's hand. The two women looked out at the crowd. The same ballroom that had once witnessed cruelty, now transformed into a monument of triumph. And in that moment, warm lights reflecting across crystal, applause echoing through a room reclaimed, Aya Morton understood. She had not just survived, she had rewritten the ending.